But hi, everybody. My name is Brady Werger. I want to thank everyone for attending today for our February Capital Chat for 2022. Like I said again, my name is Brady Werger, and I am the Vice Chair of the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council. Today, I would like to introduce Bill Collistad. He is the Public Policy Director with the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council, and Brooke Lovelace is our Executive Director with the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council, and Amy Campbell, she is one of our lobbyists that does all the work kind of behind the scenes at the Capitol to advocate for people. So I just want to say I welcome everybody today. This will be a great session today. We will be giving out a lot of good information. And I just want to remind everybody that if they have a question, don't be scared to ask. We are here to try to help you understand and answer those questions.
Thank you, Brady, and really appreciate the warm welcome. Again, I'm Bill Collistad, and Brady, you did great. We had a script, and he didn't even know it. I told him last night that he didn't need the script, that he's great off the cuff, explaining what the Iowa Developmental Disability Council does, but also the importance of advocacy. So I want to do a little bragging on Brady today. Not that I couldn't do that for every meeting that we have, but Brady is our vice chair this year of the DD Council. And I'm going to have him tell the story a little bit, but this week, Brady and I had an opportunity to go up to the Capitol with NAMI for their advocacy day on the Hill. And Brady, in his own way, started emailing a few weeks ago the governor and lieutenant governor requesting a meeting, just saying that he was going to be at the Capitol and thought it was an opportunity to meet them. And he was able to meet with both the lieutenant governor and the governor, but he also met with both his senator and his representative. And Brady, tell us a little bit about how that went.
So I'm going to kind of back up a little bit, but I live in Glenwood, Iowa, and I didn't even know that NAMI was even doing this event. The reason that I found out about this opportunity was my church. I am in a group in church for mental health called Fresh Hope for Support. And they posted something in our church newsletter, and I started reading it. I go, NAMI, Mental Health Day on the Hill. I said, that's right up my alley. So I right away took that information and registered for the event, saying, I'm a survivor of mental health, and I need to be here so I can not only advocate for myself, but so I can advocate for other people that may be going through the same mental health problems that I've gone through, and to help people realize that they're not alone. So I registered, I got everything set up. I found staffing within my agency to bring me up. I reached out right away to my Senator, Mark Costello. I reached out to my representatives, David Seek, right away and let them know that I was going to be up there. They both made time in my schedule. Some of the topics that I brought up with my senator and representative and both lieutenant governor and the governor was the continuous issues with waiting list. I shared with them that my biological sister waited 3 years to get on the waiver, and she waited 3 years for the waiver, and when she was living in an agency in Carroll, Iowa, she had extensive behaviors which made it to where the agency had to kick her out of the program because they couldn't manage her behaviors. So they had to put her in a county psychiatric hospital for about 3 to 4 months. And they ended up moving her to Brookhaven Hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Prior to her move to Tulsa, she just got approved for the waiver after, like I said, waiting for about 3.5 years. Now that she's been in waiver for a couple of years now, state of Iowa wants to come back and take her waiver that she waited 3.5 years for and asking her to reapply, which means that she might have to wait on a waiting list again. So I brought that concern up. I also brought up the concern on trying to give funding to the Glenwood Resource Center so they can open up more HCBS waiver programs within the community so they can move people from the resource center into the community of their choice. The answer I got back from that was yes, it is something that they addressed that needs to be done. They're just trying to figure out how to do it because Glenwood is more what they call a rural town. It's not like Woodward where you have, the Des Moines and the Des Moines suburbs of, Urbandale, Johnston, Grimes. Glenwood is a smaller town and we don't have those suburbs like Des Moines does. So they are trying to figure out how they can do that because they want clients to feel like they can live in the community and not have to live right off the campus of the Glenwood Resource Center. Another thing I brought up when I was meeting at the Capitol was providing training to law enforcement. And what I mean by that is, and I'll share a little example, but when I was living at Neuro Restorative in Carbondale, Illinois, I ended up getting arrested twice for fighting with the police, and they tried to charge me for a criminal matter. And when I had to go to court so they could figure out how they were going to deal with this, I said, I said to them, you guys need to look at this because I said, this is more of a mental health issue, not a crime. And I said, you guys always try to go and say that it's a crime that this individual is, doing, but do you ever look at it as a mental health issue? So I brought up with the governor and everybody that I feel like it would be great for law enforcement to get the extended training to learn more about when they respond to a call that's mental health related, how to deal with that appropriately and not consider it a crime all the time. Because there's a difference between crimes and mental health.
That's right, Brady. Brady, and I just, kind of reflecting on that day, it was wonderful, Brady. And I, the word that I would leave with too is when I think of that day, Brady, is powerful. Brady's message is clear, kind of like we put in the PowerPoint. He was there to advocate for mental health issues, whether it dealt with the police or whether it was ongoing training and support. Certainly expressed a personal story about the expression and frustration with the growing waiting list, which we know is over 15,000 Iowans currently. That was really powerful. And then, Brady, your ability to just share your story and to kind of express that you've been in a lot of different parts of what some people would call service array or the system in Iowa. And then now really starting to thrive and dealing with what the issue is rather than, if they would have dealt with the criminal issue, they were dealing with your mental health issues at that time or the support needs that you have. And at the end of the meeting, Governor Reynolds said to Brady as she was shaking his hand, just talked about how inspired she was and how she, like Amy just put, she was certainly moved by it. She did say to Brady, she goes, Brady, have you shared this information with DHS? And she goes, have you shared it with Medicaid? And Brady said both Director Garcia and Director Liz Matney knew about the issue and he's spoken to about it. And she goes, oh, Brady, I'm so thankful. And then she said, you just keep knocking on those doors, Brady. And now I'm aware and we'll keep working towards this. Thank you so much for all that you do. And I just wanted to lead off that day is the importance of personal stories and advocacy. And Amy saw Brady and I as we came downstairs after the Capitol and could tell our adrenaline was about at a level 300. Hi, Amy. So Brady, thank you always for being an advocate for the DD Council, but also for yourself and your sister and for Iowans. And another great example, we have a lot of great advocates across the state of Iowa, and Brady is really connected to that system. So thank you, Brady.
Thank you, guys. And, you know, if any of you on this meeting need anything, if you have an issue or something that I can help you advocate for, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk with you.
Brady, I love one of your quotes. You always say to people is, you know, mental health issues are important and so are disability services, and you're not alone, right? And so there's a lot of people here and a lot of people with a big voice is important. So I do want to transition and we're going to start talking about some of the bills and then create some time at the end for us to have a conversation where we can kind of gather together and talk about what's going on, but then also maybe spur some of us into action and following some advocacy opportunities. So we know it was a historic week and it's kind of been a really fast part of the legislative session, Amy, and do you want to walk us through what's going on with funnels and taxes and budgets? I feel like I'm doing something from the Yellow Brick Road here, but
I know I almost said oh my in there too. So for those of you that are fans of that. So anyway, thanks Bill and Brady. It was awesome to see you guys at the Capitol. And Brady, when I first saw him, said, well, we don't have an appointment with the governor, but I'm just going to go see if she's around. So I love that. And obviously he knocked on that door too. I know you've got a lot of advocates on here today too. And so I wanted to make sure that we had a good amount of time at the end to really just talk about whatever is on everyone's minds. And kind of go with the flow on that. So be thinking of that as we move through kind of what happened this last week, this last month. The big news was there's two big pieces of news in the last 2 weeks. It's been a pretty big couple of weeks. February 18th was the first funnel deadline. So that's a deadline that legislators put on themselves to get bills out of committee. And so any House bill had to be out of a House committee and any Senate bill had to be out of a Senate committee unless they dealt with a tax or spending. Those are considered funnel proof, so they can be done at any time during the session. So this last week was really meant to be a week of just getting bills, debating bills on the House floor and on the Senate floor. They bring them up one by one and they debate them and they vote on them. A lot of them go really fast. Others take a lot of time. And that's kind of what they need to do in order to get through to the second funnel deadline, which is coming up just in 3 weeks, when a House bill has to have been voted out of the House and then has to be voted out of committee in the Senate. So it has to be out of one chamber and then out of the committee in the other chamber. So that's a lot of work in 3 weeks time. And things can kind of fall off the agenda at this point and get lost. So those bills that are in our bill tracker, you see the link below there. If you see something that you really want to see passed, make sure you contact your legislators, because this is the time of year that things kind of just fall into the cracks and can get overlooked. And especially if they're not very controversial, people may not be paying attention to them. So just a little plug if you have some pet issues that you want to make sure get moving. But this just yesterday was the big news. The Senate and the House passed the largest tax cut bill in history. That's what everybody's saying. I don't know that that's validated or not, but they're saying that this was the biggest tax cut in history. So what I have on the screen, just ignore that, because I wrote the the PowerPoint before 6 o'clock last night or 7 o'clock when the House passed the tax cut bill. So that bill, House File 2317, is on its way to the governor. And what they settled on was 1.9 billion in tax cuts by 2028. So the first big chunk, they're going to phase in some income tax cuts. And that first big hit next year is $236 million. So that just lowers the amount of money coming into the state that the state can use to spend on programs. So it doesn't take away the money that's currently there. We have about an $8 billion budget. But we're taking in $9 billion in money. So instead of increasing spending, the legislature and those in control of the legislature have decided to just reduce the amount of money that they're bringing in. So there's the tax cuts. And what they're going to do is anybody paying state tax, income taxes, is going to have their taxes slowly lowered to 3.9%. So right now, tax rates are somewhere between 4% and 6%. And so everybody in the state is supposed to receive a tax cut. It's going to be very, very different based on how much you earn. So somebody earning $68,000 a year, a family, that's the median, the middle income, kind of the average in the state, would get about a little over $500 cut out of their state taxes. Somebody making over $1 million would save $56,000. So you can see as you earn more, you're going to have more of a tax cut. There's also some other things. So if you have parents that are retired, they won't have to pay income taxes on their retirement income. If you live on a farm and you're retired and you're leasing that farmland out, you won't have to pay taxes on the rent for that. So there's a few other things in that bill too, but the big one is the income tax cuts. And last I checked, about half of our revenues, half of the money coming into the state comes from income taxes. So that has some people concerned, I would say.
Sure. Thank you, Amy. One thing just to point out, and you kind of hit on this, is that, the first year there will be that reduction, but then it's graduated. So then by 2028, it would be around 1.9 million or something. So it is incrementally going to increase, or you'll see more of a savings as the years go on, the way the bill is written. Correct. And then, like you said, right now there's enough money coming in to pay the budget. This was maybe a surplus, but once that's decided, then what we really want to pay attention to is how is that money that is currently coming in divided, and what buckets they might put that money into. So
yeah, I think the thing that a lot of organizations like the DD Council and other organizations that work with individuals with disabilities, the one thing they're very, very concerned about is that we don't know how much it's going to take to make the changes needed from the Department of Justice report and investigation on Glenwood. And that we know is going to be a big amount of money. I'm hearing around $30 million for just Glenwood's fixes, the fixes at Glenwood. That doesn't include then starting to invest in the community options so that individuals have an alternative to living at Glenwood. So, or any other state resource center or mental health institution. So I think that's a really big unknown there. And there's some concern that as you're cutting taxes, will we have enough money to really truly do what's right and rebalance the system so that people can choose to live in the community, even if they have higher level needs, and even if they need higher level staffing, they should have that option. And so I think that's a big question mark that a lot of people have, what the impact is going to be on Medicaid and the programs and services and that, and the waiting list. I mean, 117,000, is that how many are on the waiting list for waiver services? So, I mean, takes a lot of money to clear those waiver waiting lists. And and then they start to rebuild, because a lot of people don't apply for them because they know the waiting list is so long. I think we can move to the next slide. Just wanted to show also some big news was that the budgets, the House and the Senate have announced their budget targets. This is the total amount of money they plan to spend for the year. So they'll probably revise these after the tax cut. But right now we spend in this current year, 8.1 billion. So you can see the budgets are a little bit higher. The House is slightly higher than the Senate. You know, it's about double. So the increase, so it's between 77 and 149 million dollars. The Senate hasn't released a lot of their details, but the House did, and there's an increase for Health and Human Services. And they did dedicate $25 million to fixing Glenwood, but not investing in the rest of the community-based system. So that's all we know for right now. But both plans include the $71.2 million that was promised to end all property taxes that are going into the mental health and disability services regions. So, you know, last year it was half and half state, or this current year is half and half state and local funding. And then next year will be the full state funding of the system. So that's the money promised to that. So they did live up to that commitment there. The revenue estimating conference, just for those of you who want to know about that, that's when a group that meets 4 times a year and they look at how much money's coming into the state and they kind of guess how much we're going to have to spend. And by law, the legislature has to use the numbers that the revenue estimating conference comes up with in December or March. They have to use the lower of those two. Everybody's guessing that March is going to look better than December, so that the budgets are based on the December estimates. And from what I recall seeing in the announcements from the Republicans who are the leadership in the House and the Senate, is that they're planning on spending 90% of what they're bringing in, and they're allowed to spend 99%. So they're still going to be spending under what they're allowed to. And that's been a trend.
Amy, there's some questions here in the chat, and I can kind of summarize them a little bit here before we go on to.
Well, I'm done with my part, so whatever we want to.
Yeah, let's kind of hit on these, and then we have someone who wants to kind of talk about a bill, and his name is Bill Stump. But so one question was, and I want to make sure I get this right. So instead of using money to do things relating to waiting list community-based living priorities, so some of the I think that means instead of the tax, they're doing the tax cut instead of addressing those.
Yeah, so you have $1 billion extra. You're bringing in $1 billion more than what your current budget is. So the decision is, do you spend that, or do you say we don't need to save it, we've already got enough in our savings accounts, or do you give it back to taxpayers as a tax cut? So the decision that the Republican leadership has made is to give back the money in taxes, and they're going to give it all back. It could have been a lower amount, and then, use some of it to invest in some of the priorities. But that was the policy decision that was made by those in control of the legislature.
Right.
And honestly, the rush to do it this week was that the governor is giving the Republican response to the President Biden's State of the Union address. And so they wanted to be able to showcase some of what Iowa's doing at that time. So I bet she's going to sign it today or Monday, probably Monday. They probably won't have it, or Tuesday.
Thank you. So we have another great question. I think that I've heard this spoken about quite a bit, and there's a lot of moving pieces here, and it gets kind of complex, at least in my mind. But the question was really about, there's going to be costs for fixing Glenwood, and I would throw maybe Woodward in there. We also, when Brady and I were talking to legislators this week, they talked about There's some fixes going on in the training center. There's some fixes going on at prisons. There's some fixes going on that are mandated. So there's that cost that's out there. Then in the question, it talks about right now they should be using some of that money to pay parents, because those parents are filling in the gap or providing services for people that would normally get service. And we know that one of our legislative priorities advocates, Tucker, had talked about that he has family members and friends and family filling in for over half of the care required. So we know that well, it looks like maybe we're not spending as much in community-based services. That's because there's a staffing shortage, and that, paying that part. So it's a great point. And I think there are, like really looking apples to apples for numbers, there's a lot of things that, because of the workforce shortage, because there's going to be some ongoing costs when the action plans or the plans come out to address issues at Glenwood or Woodward, that's going to be some cost. And what's it going to cost to fix those issues? And then at the end of that comment, it said, right now the waivers aren't offering help because of COVID, those struggles. So while there looks like a surplus, the worry is that we're not really looking at a realistic cause. That's the way I understand that question.
Yeah, and I know there has been some discussion about allowing parents to be paid for those services. And there's not a bill, but I know that they had some discussion when they had budget committees. So I think that's something you want to just probably keep bringing up with your legislators right now. I actually think that they might really listen to that. They're really trying to find ways to help, especially get parents when they want to get back to work. They want to get them back to work. So I think that's a good point to bring up. See, there's some other ones in here.
There's a really good one about the extra money is from the stimulus money, and how much of that, what percentage of that is. And then,
Yeah, the stimulus money is separate. So the legislature doesn't appropriate that, or doesn't have any say in how that's being spent. The governor is. And I know a lot of that is going, there was the $1,000 retention bonus that's going to teachers, police officers, childcare workers, prison workers, is coming out of that. And I know that there was some DHS money that Department of Human Services money that they were using to invest in home and community-based services that's separate from the governor's pot of dollars that they were sending out. So I know that money's going out. I will put a link in InfoNet this week to a chart that a nonpartisan staff group does that it's called the Legislative Services Bureau, and they're nonpartisan staff, and they look at all the fiscal stuff. And so they have a running list of how that money is being spent and where it's going. So I'll put that link in InfoNet this week. I'm writing that down so I don't forget it.
So let's transition. It seems like we have some people with their hands up, and we have some really other good continued conversation here. So I want to give as much time as we can. I'm going to transfer over to Brooke really quick. She's going to do just a quick plug for an event that's coming up, and then introduce Emily. If you could pin Bill Stump, we're going to have him talk a little bit about some legislation that he is advocating for as well. So, and Brooke, if you could introduce Bill too. Thank you.
I can, yes, thanks, Bill. Just real quick here, I just wanted to point out to all of our advocates and on our virtual meeting here today is that March is Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month. And hopefully you've seen some of our emails about it, but we are asking for our advocates. And if you know an advocate that's not on here today, if you can let them know, we're asking for people to submit stories such as Brady's advocacy stories that we shared today of Brady's. If you have something like that you'd like to share, or it can be just anything creative that you'd like to share too. It doesn't have to all be about policy. If you have created a short story or a poem or are good at art, which all of that always just kind of awes me because I have no artistic ability at all. So if you have some artistic ability and want to share some of your work with us, we would love to be able to share those types of things throughout the month. Emily will, I think, put in the chat, if she hasn't already, a link to submit those. So if you know of somebody that's not on here today, please do let them know that we are asking for that, and we want to just celebrate all the great things that our folks with all disabilities. And I think then that's all I had for that. But I do, is Bill's on, isn't he? Yep, there he is. Hi, Bill. Bill wants to talk to you about a bill that has to do with guardianship and why they are for this particular bill. So, and to introduce Bill, I don't know, he's just a really good advocate, I guess. He used to be on our DD Council pre-Bill and Brooks time here, but he's been a good advocate for employment issues and all types of things. And so he wants to share with you a bill he wants you to look at. Now, how many times can we say Bill? I'm going to stop and shut up now.
Thank you, Brooke, for challenging me here. Bill, and I'm going to talk about the bill. We got some bills here today. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And I guess as, you know, Amy's kind of pointed out and Bill, and I'm going to encourage Amy to jump in on this because she may have some thoughts on it as well, because I know enough to be dangerous sometimes. But I do live here in Dubuque with my son, Kyle, who's 32 and does work in competitive integrated employment. And that's really the big thing that we advocate for these days. But a couple of years ago, I was asked by Professor Josie Gittler, who teaches at the Iowa Law School, to serve on the Iowa Guardianship Conservatorship Association that she created. So I want to point out immediately that when I mentioned Josie, she doesn't speak on behalf of the University of Iowa. This is something that she's doing outside of her employment. And I know she always mentions that. So I think that's worth mentioning to folks just so they understand. But so I guess this is one of those things that kind of falls under the radar. Something that's happening. It's not getting a lot of attention, but it has potential repercussions for protected persons that may have a guardian or conservator, or for guardians and conservators themselves. So basically a little background on how this all unfolded. In 2019, the guardianship conservatorship laws were strengthened to require better reporting and oversight. It was a bipartisan effort and passed on a bipartisan basis, and it does prevent abuse and neglect. The initial care plan, there's an initial care plan, and I'll be honest, as a guardian, it was kind of difficult to get through that first plan. But when you think about it, it should be prior to the care plan. As a guardian, I simply every 3 years wrote a one-pager that I dittoed every year or every 3 years that said, yeah, I fed him, clothed him, took him to the doctor, that's it. So it was talking about what you did the last 3 years. The care plan lays out a care plan, what you're going to do down the road, and they no longer do the triennials, the 3 years. So it really does create a living document. And then I just completed our annual. Took me about 2 hours, but basically it says, you told us this, did you do this? And if not, why? So it wasn't problematic. I used the Supreme Court forms. Some probate lawyers have said that they're onerous. You have to have an attorney. I am not an attorney by any stretch of the imagination, and I did not hire an attorney to help me with this. And I'll go back that it creates that living document. And what is happening is we do the association support Senate File 348, which is the only one that has the bill number now. Basically 348 would just make some minor fixes. A lot of it is language that needed to be cleaned up, and our association supports that 100%. What some folks in the House are looking at doing is almost, for lack of a better word, gutting it and going back to what we've done before. And a lot of that is coming from attorneys that feel like guardians have to hire an attorney. And again, I'm going to repeat, I am not an attorney by any stretch, and it is doable. What I think the courts could do is better training. And I think, maybe if we partner with some groups to provide some training to folks on how to do the forms. The other point I would make is that everybody that's a guardian or conservator now at this point has gone through that process. So that initial care plan is built, and you just need to update it. So to go back will further confuse families, parents, guardians, conservators. And I can't say it enough that, you know, it just, there's misinformation out there, and the misinformation, quite frankly, I believe is coming from the probate lawyers, and it's created more work for them if somebody comes to them to do this. But again, given the proper training, families can do this fairly easily. It is a long form, and quite frankly, I've wrapped my head around the fact that it should be a long form. And the biggest thing that concerns me as a guardian is I'm not going to live forever. And at some point, somebody's going to take over that role. Well, that person needs to understand the financial repercussions that could come from somebody that doesn't understand the system. And I'm probably preaching to the choir on this call, because all of you probably know the system better than I, and know that you have to understand things about Medicaid, Social Security, SSI, especially if you're going to work. So I just want to encourage you, and I know I believe Amy put in the chat that there is a hearing on Tuesday. I will be coming to Des Moines Monday. I'm going to speak at that hearing, subcommittee hearing that's going to start to take this up. So it's been hidden that it's still going, but I think they're going to do it through. So I would encourage you, if you can, if you feel strongly like I do about this, is to, you know, reach out to your House or Senate members, especially in the House. The chairman of the committee, of that Judiciary Committee, is Representative Holt, and I believe Representative Height is maybe he's on it, but I'm not sure if he's the vice chair or not. But also Todd Pritchard is on that committee too, and I think those are the three that will be doing the subcommittee on Tuesday. So the other thing I'd ask, if anybody is in Des Moines or would like to come to Des Moines and provide support, to just show up at the hearing if you'd like to speak. But if not, we want some folks to let the committee know that people are paying attention to this. So I appreciate the time. I could probably go on about it for hours, but I don't know, Amy, if you have any thoughts or not on it.
No, and I think that bill is so complicated, and you did such a good job of explaining it in real terms, because when you look at the bill, it's pretty, you have to be a lawyer to really read the bill. But it's complicated. Unfortunately, I think what happened is there were some legislative personality conflicts going on, and it really sabotaged the bill. That's all I can say, as I think that unfortunately things unrelated to the policy in the bill made it sort of stall out and not move. And so just when I went around asking, after Bill S called, the Bill K, when the bill talked, I went around to ask if that bill was going to be, it was alive, and everybody told me it was dead. And then I tell Bill that, and then the next day there's a subcommittee. So that just tells you how the session goes, you know, never say never. So I put in some links there. I will put those in InfoNet too. I made a note of myself to note that the links of how you can watch in the House. You can watch the subcommittees, but you can't participate online, but you can submit comments online. Now, Bill, can you remind me, does that bill, does Senate File 348 include both adults and children guardianships, or is it just adult?
I believe so. So, that just off the top of my head. And I'd also point out that our association does have a lobbyist, and it's who used to serve in the House. He is an attorney, and he is our lobbyist for this. And he could be better schooled than I. It does get complicated, and I'm thankful for Josie Gittler at because she's really educated me on it. I will point out that we have met with several members of the Judiciary Committee, both Republicans and Democrats, and I've told my story, and I'm frank, it was tough at first. It was a difficult process, but again, the process is done. And the potential for folks to, you know, take advantage of people financially is really high if we go back, because there is no oversight. And the care plan and the updates every year provide oversight to the court. Now, whether the courts are looking at those really close, I don't know. If county courts are, it may vary from county to county. But my point with that is if you ever were turned in and somebody suspected you may be abusing as a guardian or conservator, that document is there, and you darn well better be able to show that you did the things that you said you were going to do. So that's where the oversight comes in my belief, just in a kind of non-academic, you know, way. So thank you, Amy, and thank you, Bill and Brooke and Brady for giving me this opportunity. It's tough to follow Brady Werger anytime. And thank you for your voice, Brady. Sounds like an exciting day last week on the Hill. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Bill.
you, Bill.
Good job, Dad.
This is Teresa Baumhoff, and I'd like to echo and support everything that Bill said. I'm on the Iowa Guardianship and Conservatorship Association board also. Been a past guardian conservator for my daughter. And what this does is if you aren't making a financial plan and a health plan for the person that you're supposed to be protecting, this is what gives you the format to do it. And without having a plan in mind and just, you know, shooting from the hip, only doing the minimum, that type of thing, you can't do that with the process that's been set up. And this was a Supreme Court task force that originally did the work. I think there was over 90 to 100 people that were a part of that task force. And they came to the conclusion that our guardianship and conservatorship process or program was broken, that we really weren't protecting people the way we should. And the forms are a product of that process, a very thoughtful process. So, like I say, I'm all for this bill, and unfortunately, what some of the probate lawyers expect is to have an easier process for them to do, and this didn't do that. So
Thank you, Teresa. I appreciate that, and hopefully Amy will put some information in our weekly newsletter this week at the Capitol, and people can kind of become more informed on that. Bill did a great job, and Teresa, you kind of added to that. You can tell things are getting a little more serious at the Capitol. We have a lot of conversation going on in the chat, which is great. Always makes us wonder if we should extend these a little bit longer, or at least have a room to have a conversation afterwards. Chad has been patiently waiting with his hand up there for a while. So I'm going to have Chad go, and we can see he's had some different comments in there. So he might be a whole different topic, or he can kind of clarify what he was wanting. But Chad, go ahead. Thank you for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me. My name is Chad Webb. I'm a single father. I raised my 13-year-old daughter, have her whole life. And now I have my 5-year-old son. The conservator and guardian conversation that Bill just had, it really hit me hard, because again, I want to make sure my son gets to a point to where he can hopefully maintain on his own. And I'm here to tell you, before I got my son, he was physically abused and sexually abused, all caught on videotape right here in Iowa, all caught on videotape. The man who did this was the mom's boyfriend. Of course, she moved out and had my son at first, was the boyfriend. So caught on videotape. I still have these videos, and there's a point to this, but he got a plea deal from our government that got him off child abuse registry and a sexual abuse registry. Got a plea deal. Of course, they put a no contact order on him. About 5 months later, he was caught back in the house. Actually, I found out he was at the house. I had to get evidence of this. Long story short, about February 2020, I finally got someone to go in and catch him there and get my son out. So again, we're talking about pro-life Republicans that preach this, pro-life. They force people to have children, but they don't protect them when they get here. We're talking about a disabled child who cannot communicate and speak back to anybody. And to this day, the mom got charged with child endangerment and is on probation for 2 years. And she still gets unsupervised visitation of my nonverbal son 2 hours away. Okay. That's one issue. That's probably for a different place. Maybe judiciary. I don't know, who cares. I've been up to Capitol a few times. I spoke to many. I spoke to Republicans specifically because, to be honest, I helped vote them into office. And I'm here to tell you, I at this point in time, I could never vote for them again. Here's why. Pro-life is just a slogan they use. It's not real. They're not protecting life. They're certainly not protecting the most vulnerable among us. Okay. And I'm having a hard time swallowing this. It's hard enough to witness this. So now back to this current situation. We are on a full ID waiver. We have the ID waiver. I got my son in school. He's got an IEP. Again, get on these chat rooms, Iowa Autism Society, all these other ones. You're going to find out that this is a whole job in itself. Making sure these IEPs are formed correctly and also followed correctly. I currently have an investigation going, hopefully, with the OCR, because, my school district, of course, is denying services, and I have to look into this. I mean, I wish I could get a grant to go be a lawyer. I need to be. You almost have to be to do this. I mean, we are in a dire situation right now. I do everything for my children. I mean, they talk about this money. If they really want to help parents out here, the south side of Des Moines desperately needs a child care center, kind of like Johnston and ChildServe. We need that on the south side. I have to drive to Johnston twice a day, 2 times a day, to give my son a half a day of ABA therapy. Half a day. Now, I've told these Republicans many times, just pay attention. You have to invest in this now. These kids need this service. COVID has hurt these kids so bad. And I know there's more severely disabled people than my son. And I feel for those parents. I'm sure they're having a tough time going through this. But for kids like mine with autism that have a chance to be rehabilitated, per se, I mean, they don't want to put no money into this. So I don't understand. They're going to end up having to pay for these kids anyway, or adults. They're going to pay for them. I don't know. I've just never been I've never felt so helpless in my whole life. And rent, we're facing eviction. They know this. I mean, there's bills that need to be paid. They're not getting paid, but when it comes to special needs, I'm in the rock and a hard spot, because if I don't give my son the needs, and get him services that he has to have, I could be criminally liable for that. I mean, I could lose my kid for that. But at the same time, go to work, even though we don't have daycare services, it's non-existent. I mean, unless you got a family member or you are, well, I hate to say this, and it's no offense to women, because women, I respect them more today than I ever have, because I know what it takes for them to raise these kids. It's so hard. But to be a man out here, I mean, integrating into the community and trying to reach out to all these, women per se, because they deal with the kids, that's even a harder task. I mean, I just can't even tell you. This has been so hard, and I'm very disappointed in our Iowa Republicans. I can't stress that enough. I've supported them. I do have some of the values, but I can never leave kids, especially, that are out here, and the parents, they're with them. These kids need services so parents can go to work. We can't just cut off, benefits and say, okay, we're going to put together a daycare task force. 6 months later, we'll get back to you. Hopefully you can pay your bills for this whole 6 months. I don't know. I got a little off track. I'm sorry. But
No.
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead, Amy.
No, I was gonna say, I think we all are just feel that pain and frustration that you have. I actually also lobby for the Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and I know that there's a couple legislators that have tried to address some of these issues, but I don't know what happened to those bills because they never moved forward. But I'm wondering if I know Sarah Trungariet's on who's a state senator. I don't know if she has some advice too. And I know I put representative, it's Senator Waylon Brown, that it was working on some of that and trying to get some legislation passed to address some of what you came up against with the sexual assault and that type of stuff. But I don't know, Paula raised her hand too. I don't know if she wanted to respond to that.
Mine's on a different subject, so go ahead and finish off this conversation. I'll jump in.
Okay.
Thank you. Just give me one more second. And another thing I want to talk about is the compulsory attendance law. I mean, I can't even tell you. I just don't even imagine how a lot of people get through this, but that was one of the reasons that I tried to get a 504 plan put in place, is because of my son's ADHD. He has sleep issues. You know, now the schools force either saying, bring your child in with no sleep and let him go ahead and deal with the traumatic day, which is the only day. I mean, this is a big deal. And I don't know if anyone else has heard this or even talked to other parents about it, but between doctor's appointments, between COVID, and dealing with the schools, I mean, they just seem like they don't want to even bend on this stuff. Well, it's law. Well, I get it. Maybe you guys need to start studying on federal law, because it's possible to do. But again, unless you have representation, you are destined. You're just destined to push yourself out of a home, because no one's got the time to do this stuff. All of it wrapped in one. I don't know what else to say other than priorities are a little messed up, or we need to have bigger conversations or something. But I see a lot of people out here having problems that don't speak up, and I don't criticize them too much. If I can, I'll be a voice, you know. I mean, I've worked hard my whole life, digging ditches, plumbing, you know, building houses, and I can't even do it no more. And quite frankly, at this point, I don't want to. I want to make sure my kid's taken care of, as any parent would. So sorry, that's where I'm at. I'm trying.
Bill, you know, Brady made a comment in there saying that you're not alone. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people really passionate about what you're talking about, but I do see, you know, one of the things that I think about is that at a lot of the hearings and opportunities to speak to legislators when a bill comes up or is even considered, sometimes there are a few people that speak up against it. Sometimes there are people who are lobbyists, but sometimes there's family members. Those really, kind of back to the beginning part with Brady, they really carry a lot of weight. And I saw our Senator Sarah turned on her camera. Maybe she wants to say a few words, and she had some other comments about some other conversations we're having there. So we'll kind of go to her and then we'll go to you, Paula. Thank you, Senator.
Hello, everybody. Chad, your voice is really important, because when legislators make policy, we need to understand all of the impacts, and not every family is the same. Not every situation is the same, and there will be different impacts. And so we need to be hearing these stories in order to make good decisions and think about all of the ways it's going to affect the people of Iowa. Just about childcare, I tried to present an amendment to the tax bill yesterday that would provide expanded tax credit for families who have children in daycare, in childcare, and it didn't move forward. But I mean, that's something the governor recommended, is that we did targeted tax credits and tax cuts specifically to support childcare, and we're not seeing any of that in this session. The childcare work that was done last year was just little tiny things. It wasn't enough to truly give people the support they need. And the one childcare bill that was passed in the Senate this session was about expanding the ratios, so there were more kids to an adult, especially for 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds. If you've got a child who has special needs, behavioral issues, they need more extra support, that's not good for your family. That's going to make it really hard for those families to get childcare. And so we need to be thinking about these concerns. So I just really encourage folks to develop a relationship with their legislator, but then also to get connected to the majority leaders in each chamber. In the Senate, that's Jack Whitver. In the House, that's Pat Grassley. I'm going to put the link in the chat where you can find all of those folks and their contact information to call them. And they're the ones that decide what bills move forward, what bills get a hearing, what bills get to be debated on, and what bills become law. And so they have a lot of power to shape the policy that we see. And so for families to be reaching out to them, even if you don't live in their district, they're making decisions that impact you. And that's really, really important. Also, I was visiting with the new director of the Iowa Civil Rights Commission this morning, and they have to do with concerns about civil rights being violated in education. And so I'm going to put in the chat or where you can file a complaint. And these are for folks who don't have legal representation. They do the work for you, and that you can file a complaint, and they can also assist you in filing that complaint. And so that's just another possibility. But I am really concerned about the caregiver workforce crisis we have. We need more folks in this community to be able to support our neighbors and our family members so parents can go to work. So that it isn't so hard all the time for everyone to move forward. It's just heartbreaking to hear how hard folks are working to keep their families safe, to get them what they need. And I know we can do better, and we have the resources right now, and we could really invest in our state. And so that's something I'm fighting for. I'll sign off and put those things in the chat.
Thank you. Just one last thing too. So I've been trying to get in to speak to like a body of legislators. I've been trying and trying. I don't know if it's a possible thing to do at a certain point in time, but I mean, I've been up there and talked to Steve Holt personally. I've talked to Brooke Bowden personally. I've been up there and talked to who else? Jillian Garrett personally. I've talked to Amy Sinclair personally. For probably 2 years I've talked to Amy, but again, I don't know, they just are forming this whole just hard line on everything. It's almost like if you cannot bring in any kind of revenue to tax, you're not valuable and you don't matter. And again, I keep telling them, I helped put you in office. I'm not the only one that feels this way, you know, and I hope it's resonating. But one thing I did in my community, which I'm starting to get some people to listen, is I started I'm trying to get a advisory committee started in the school district with the school board made up of parents that have these kids, so they can advise the school board, which is mostly made up of parents that don't have kids with special needs, so they get rolled over by the administration. That has helped, and I've been advocating with mayors, just trying to bring awareness, you know, in hopes that you know, other people will start catching on. And it seems to be getting conversation, but we don't have enough people doing that, it seems. That's all.
Thank you, Chad. It makes me think of that quote that all politics are local. I mean, that's a great, you know, there's the stuff you're fighting on the state level that's really important. And I think that we, you know, everybody needs to be aware of those. And there's a lot of different facets you kind of hit on. But then also the school board is so essential. So Paula, go ahead. And
I just jump in? I sent you a message, Chad, in the chat. Could you take a look at that? I'd like to talk to you some more privately.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
We are at time. Some people may be signing off, but Paula, we'll get you, and then we're going to wrap up here. So.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted to point out, we've talked about wait lists here. We've also had several conversations with Liz Matney in the town halls. This is one time where we really need to work with our congressional, jointly with our congressional delegation. There is a bill before Congress that hasn't moved called Better Care, Better Jobs. And pieces of that are going to have to be broken apart and carved out. But without that funding coming into our state, the estimators that I talk to at the national level say that states will not be able to address their individual wait lists. We are not the only state that is looking at the length of wait list. Our neighboring states also have huge issues. So I just wanted to make sure people are thinking about this, and spring breaks are coming up. Our congressional delegation is going to be at home again. And I want to make sure that we're talking to them about family caregiving, direct care staff, how difficult. I know I've been without the staff we typically have for my son for over 2 years, and something, I mean, we're at a crisis. There's just no doubt about it. I'm not the only family, but I just wanted to point out that, again, this is a time where we also need to have this issue addressed nationally as well as locally.
Paula, thank you. What a great way to, Brady, to end on a note with Brady, but Brady asked a question of the director of DHS about funding for community-based services, and in response to the DOJ finding and wanting to make sure there were enough resources for people in the community to receive services. And she said, her comment was, Brady, that really, if you have an opportunity to speak at the national level about the Better Care, Better Jobs Act, really make sure your voice is heard, and make sure they know about the waiting list, but also the need for support, whether it's, two of our main priorities with the DD Council. One is the waiting list, and then the other one is around the workforce. And we'll make sure we have some information on there that you can link. The real easy opportunity is to go into our Take Action Center, and you can contact your either your state or your federal representatives right from there. And Paula, that's a great call for action. An important thing for us to do. So thank you everybody so much for attending. We really appreciate all the activity here. We, as I think about these meetings and last year, as we continued to share our bills, the engagement is great. We're getting more and more discussion. So we'll continue to evaluate that and figure out a way where we can create space for these passionate stories like Chad's, and these passionate stories like Brady's and Bill's, because that's really important. We can, in our weekly newsletter, which I hope you're getting, and if you're not, you can send a message to Brooke and I, and we can make sure you're on there. But if you're getting our weekly email, that does summarize what happened at the Capitol, and we can spend a lot more time in conversation to make sure that we're advocating for the correct things. So everybody have a great afternoon and a great weekend, and we're glad that you're here, and keep advocating and don't give up, and you're not alone, as Brady would say. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.